Bowing down to the broadcast.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. This is the Book Talk Nation event with Emily Giffin and Gwen Reyes. This will work a little bit like an author event in a bookstore. Emily will talk about her book, The One and Only, which comes out on May 20th. If you haven't purchased The One and Only, you can do so at booktalknation.com or right here on this video page, and Emily will sign and personalize it for you. Indie bookstore Eagle Eye Books in Decatur, Georgia will fulfill all the orders and ship them to your door. The sales for these signed and personalized copies will stay open until Sunday night, so you want to make sure you get your order in by then. There's a chat box under this video window. You can use that chat box to interact with Emily during the video chat and enter your questions. In about 20 minutes, Emily will answer your questions from the chat box and also some of the questions you submitted ahead of time when you RSVP'd for the event. Until then, I'm going to hand it over to our interviewer today, Gwen Reyes. Gwen founded the website Fresh Fiction in 2004 with her mother, Sarah. Since then, the Fresh Fiction Events Division has grown from 5 to over 45 reader-author events annually. Gwen's professional writing career began in 2009, following a 3-year stint in the film festival world. As a member of the Television Critics Association, she travels all over the country to interview your favorite actors and actresses. And in 2012, she joined the staff of Good Morning Texas as the ABC affiliate's literary contributor. Gwen is currently writing her first book, a teen novel about young love and ghosts. So welcome, Gwen, and welcome, Emily. Gwen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Emily. Well, and Emily, I have the lovely Emily Giffin talking to us, I think, from Atlanta today, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, Emily, you are the author of 6 New York Times bestselling books, and hopefully 7 next week with The One and Only. And I am super excited to chat with you. I was just reading The One and Only a couple of days ago because we picked it for Channel 8 WFAA in Dallas as our first book club pick. So we're actually going to be talking about the book on television in the coming weeks. So thank you so much for chatting with us. And I just want to jump right into the book because it takes place in Dallas, which is my hometown.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I love Dallas. I love Texas. And it was a lot of fun doing research for the book. I went down to Dallas a couple times, and you know, The One and Only is set in the world of college football, so I thought it was a great, colorful place to set the action.
Mm-hmm. So, what made you choose to do Texas instead of Atlanta or instead of Georgia?
Well, you know, kind of what I just said. I think that there's few places more evocative for college football, more colorful than Texas. So it felt like the perfect place to set the book.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I loved when I was reading it is that because I am a Texan and I did grow up with football in my blood, I loved reading it because it felt like something I was really familiar with. I'm also a huge fan of Friday Night Lights, which I felt like this had a nice influence, that this came from a nice influence. Was that an influence at all for you, or was it more of a personal experience?
Well, I wouldn't say Friday Night Lights influenced it, but I think that's another example of just you know, how colorful this whole world is. I think, you know, I do enjoy Friday Night Lights, though, both the book and the series.
Well, and you had with your first 3 novels, they were kind of like loosely connected, and then you've spun off and done these separate ones, and then with The One and Only, I was just curious, what was it about Shay's story that you were excited about telling?
Well, you know, I really wanted to tell a story about a woman learning to follow her passion, follow her heart. I think that's a theme in a lot of my books. You know, sort of finding yourself and finding who you are, whether that's in a relationship or a job, which career certainly factored into part of Shay's journey. But for this book, I think perhaps I can't think of another where I explored this per se, but I really wanted to just sort of explore the idea of an unconventional love. And, you know, I think so often sort of society lays out for us what what we expect love to look like and relationships to look like. And when people make choices that fall out of those constraints, I think there's often judgment that comes with that. So it really is, I think the tagline on my Facebook page now says, what if you fell in love with the one person you shouldn't? And I think that's definitely something that happens to Shay in The One and Only.
Yeah, and it absolutely does, and that's, you know, she has a lot of ups and downs romantically in the book, you know, and the one that she falls in love with, I'm not going to spoil anything, but it is a huge, I was surprised by it, And I think that that is something that's really kind of fun about your, or really interesting about your books, is that you always have kind of explored these unconventional relationships. And I'm just curious, what have you learned from going from Something Borrowed to now The One and Only, of telling these romances? What have you kind of learned from that book to this book?
Well, that's hard to answer because I've grown up so much in the course of time that when I started writing Something Borrowed, I was 29 years old. I just left the legal profession. I had moved to London. I was not married. I did not have children. I wasn't pregnant, and so since then, I now have 10-year-old twin sons and a 6-year-old daughter, and I'm married, and I'm 42, and so a lot has changed in my life. So it's really hard to sort of pinpoint in what ways, but I think that you can sort of see that journey in my fiction and some of the themes. And I think my books, as I've grown up, I think my characters have sort of matured, and there's I like to think there's more depth to my stories now. But I've always written about relationships, and whether it's mothers and daughters or best friends, and husbands and wives, and I love exploring relationships and the messiness of them, and how good people are capable of doing things that are very hurtful to others. And I write about forgiveness and second chances, and so I think a lot of those themes have remained throughout the Something Borrowed and Something Blue, those two books that were related. So it's a long-winded answer for you, Gwen.
Oh no, is it great? Because that's something I have noticed between that and this one, is that you really have matured, and you are exploring these more mature themes that I think, as your readers have grown from Something Borrowed to now The One and Only, is that something that you're hoping that they have gone on that journey along with you as well?
Well, I mean, I think that all of my books, I like to think anyway, and the characters, speak to readers in different ways. And I've always enjoyed going to signings and meeting, my readers, and having them and hearing that feedback, because, a lot will say, oh, Love, the One You're With was my absolute favorite, and then others will say Baby Proof really, changed my life. And I think people relate to the characters in different ways. So that's been a lot of fun as a writer.
Awesome. Well, and I think a lot of authors have tried to dip their toes into what we like to call women's fiction, and I think that Emily Giffin definitely fits into that women's fiction world. What was it about that genre that you really enjoyed, or was it just kind of where you fell?
Well, I don't think about genre when I write. I sort of leave that up to my publisher and to the marketing side of things. And to be honest, I think a lot of those sort of feelings that readers have about your work, but and women's fiction I think of as just as sort of a broad catch-all that's not any one genre. But again, it might sound like a broken record, but I come back to the fact that I write about relationships. And I don't write legal thrillers, and I don't write medical mysteries, or a lot of these other genres. I just write about relationships, and so that's what I care about. That's what I think really defines us and who we are in our lives. If we really think about who we are, I think the first thing we think of, what's the most important thing to us, it's our families and friends. And so those are the things that I like to write about and think about, and all the layers of those relationships, because they're not always straightforward, certainly, and the choices that we make and how it impacts those relationships. I think everyone can relate to those things. Mm-hmm. And I think even men who do read my book, generally it's mostly women, and it's categorized as women's fiction, but the men who have read my books have related to the characters, because again, it's about marriage, and they comprise half of marriages. So
that's true. Well, and I think going back to the relationship thing, and of course we always want to focus on the love aspect, but one of the things I really loved about The One and Only was the relationship between Shay and Lucy, and how messy, to take paraphrase from yourself, their relationship is messy, and it is complicated, and it only gets more complicated as the story goes along. How did you find them? How did you find their right rhythm?
As far as Shay and Lucy go, I mean, it's really hard to say to answer that question about characters, because every book starts with just a general idea, and then as the seed grows and as I write, it's a very organic process, and I get to know the characters as I write the book, and so their journey and their path sort of changes as I get to know them, if that makes sense. It's sort of like if you present a dilemma to your best friend who you've known your whole life, you sort of know what she's going to do. But if it's an acquaintance, you might not be sure of what her choice will be or how she'll handle a crisis or choice. But so that's sort of how it is with my characters in the beginning. I'm just getting to know them, and so the novel can sometimes change directions. But at its heart, the One and Only is very much about it features a romantic relationship and romantic choices and Shay's career choices, but it's also the Shay-Lucy friendship is very important to this book, and I think that people will relate to the two girls in different ways and see themselves, and some will be sort of see themselves more in Shay and others more in Lucy. The few friends who I have had to read the book, and I've said, like, whose side are you on? Because at one point there is sort of a dilemma that arises between the two girls, and I've really heard different things from different people, but for the most part it's like they could understand where both of the girls were coming from, and they really felt empathy for for Lucy's situation, having just lost her mother, which just happens in the first chapter, so it's not a spoiler. And then, of course, Shay's, romantic choices. But I love writing about friendship, and I think female friendship particularly, can be very complicated, because I think we're very complicated.
Definitely, like very complicated and very special. And that was one of the things I kept pulling out with Lucy and Shay was I could relate. I've known my best friend since I was 12.
Okay.
And so I could definitely relate to that sort of back and forth, loving, hating sort of vibe that they both shared with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just want to switch gears a little bit and talk about you're a rare author who's had a chance to have a movie made out of her book. I just wanted, before we throw questions to our audience, how was that experience for you?
Oh, it was amazing. It really was so much fun. When I first heard that the movie would be, the book had been optioned, several years passed before anything happened. So it was sort of like, okay, I believe it when I see it. But when the momentum really kicked in and things started to happen, it was a surreal experience. And I was very lucky to work with producers and a director who were so inclusive. They didn't have to include me contractually. They just did, and we all got along really well. Molly Smith and Hilary Swank were two of the producers. Molly Smith did The Blind Side in Atlanta, so I met her here right before they started to shoot Something Borrowed, and she was wonderful. And the director, Luke Greenfield, was great to work, and the cast. I became, good friends with Colin Egglesfield, and he's a good guy, great guy. Played Dex, of course, and so it was a lot of fun. I think they did I love the adaptation. Of course, there's always going to be things that you would change or tweak in the process, but overall, I thought they remained very true to the feel of the book and the characters, and I think they did a great job.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Emily, this was so wonderful. I know we have lots of questions waiting for you, but I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Well, thank you so much. It's so weird to look in Skype because you can see
your whole face. I know. It's hard not to stare at yourself.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of questions for you from both the chat box and the pre-submitted questions. So I'm going to just launch right in.
Okay.
So Casey wants to know, how did you find the inner courage to quit law and start writing? And do you think that that's reflected in the characters you write?
Oh, that's an interesting question, Casey. I think because yes, I don't know how much of it was strength. It certainly felt like I'm taking a big risk when I left the law, but at the same time, I hated the legal profession, the practice of it. So when you really are in a position of disliking a job or having over a relationship, in some ways it's easier to make a change than if you're just sort of lukewarm or happy enough. So, but I do think that the theme of following your heart and taking a risk and really trying to discover who you are has been a thread that has run throughout my books, and I think that a lot of that stems with the experience of thinking in my 20s about who I wanted to be and where I wanted to be in 10 years from then, and what job I wanted, and what I wanted to be doing, and the risks that I had to take to get there. And I think we all have to take those chances in our lives.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, sort of in conjunction with that, we've had a lot of variations on the question of, do you see yourself in any of the characters in your books?
Well, certainly. I mean, I think first of all, I think there's a sort of universality to what I write. So when you're talking about relationships, we can all relate in some ways to all the characters, because we're either mothers, or we're daughters, or we're sisters, or we're friends, or we're married, and so of course. And I think to write in the first person, certainly, I think that also it requires another level of identifying with your character. And so I would say that with all of my protagonists, there's something there that I can really relate to. And with lesser characters, it's not quite as important because you're not in their heads as much. But with Shay, I think I could relate very much to her passion for college sports. I've been very passionate about college athletics since I was a little girl, and watching college basketball when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. And so, definitely Shay and I had that in common. But I could go through each character, each protagonist in each book, and tell you the thing. Even Darcy, she had twins, and I had twins, and she lived in London, and I was pregnant in London. So I've had something in common with all of my main protagonists. Yes.
Okay, and if you could have, say, dinner or coffee with any one character you've written about from any of your books, who would you choose?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe Darcy. I have a special place in my heart for Something Blue, and for Darcy and Ethan and their story. I was writing Something Blue when I think I mentioned pregnant with the boys, and so it was a very special time with my twin sons. It's a very special time in my life. But I really like Lucy in this new book too. And Shay. I like these girls. I'm always probably going to answer the book that I've recently written, because I feel like they've been in my head for so long, and I'd love to sit down with Shay and hear how things are going. I almost gave the end of the book away. Just
don't do that.
I almost did, but I didn't.
So here's one that I was pre-submitted, and I'm very interested in the answer, so I'm going to ask it. You are notoriously personal and close with a number of your readers. What do you think is the best and worst part of that relationship? And have you ever what fan gifts have you received that have maybe blown your mind?
Oh, Kate, where's my phone? Where's my little phone? Yeah. Well, I have a reader. I like to call them readers and not fans. Fans sound so but one of a reader, her name is Carla Chocoholic. She's on Facebook, and she made me this little phone cover for my, with the cover of The One and Only. It's my phone. And so, Carla, thank you for that. I told you I used it, but here's proof. And so that was really special. But I have connected with, obviously I like to relate on Facebook, and it gets harder as the numbers grow. But there have been some people along the way that I've really connected with, and have been special to me. So, yeah, there's one girl her name is Bridget. There's a piece about her in Redbook magazine coming out next month. She's a young writer. She's 17, and you can pick up Redbook and see that essay about her in our little photo shoot. Redbook flew her down from New York to Atlanta, and we had a lot of fun that day. So I feel very lucky to have such wonderful readers, and to connect with these girls and women and men. Mike Widener on Facebook, he's a friend of mine. But there's some great people, and it's really fun, and it's a great way to procrastinate. Right.
So here's a question that's been submitted in the chat box. If you could change the ending of any of your prior books, which would you choose, and how would and what changes would you make?
I wouldn't change any of the endings. for sure. I mean, you know, I feel like I'm very true to the characters and really try to follow what I think they will do. And so I haven't second guessed any of their stories. I really haven't, which is funny because I second guess myself all the time, but not my characters.
Well, that's great. Means you know where they're going. So I have a pre-submitted question as well from us.
On Skype, wait a second. On Skype, are you supposed to look down at the box, the people you're talking to? Like, what looks better, that or when you look into the light?
Look at the camera.
So you look up into the light, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Except that I'm looking down at my notes.
Okay. Okay.
So, how do you keep the balance with your family of young children and your upwardly spiraling career?
Oh, I mean I get that question so uniformly across the board, and I never really know how to answer it because it's sort of like with everyone, you just do the best you can, and it's just it's really tough whether you're I think a stay-at-home mother or you work part-time or you work full-time. I think or you don't have children. I mean, regardless of who you are and what you're doing, I mean, life is just a series of compromises, and there's no such thing as having it all. I don't think. You always have to make sacrifices and give something up to get something else, and you make choices with how to balance your friendships and your work and your free time and everything else. And I think it's just a day-by-day effort to get as much focus on quality maybe over quantity, and try to get as much done as you can, and just do the best you can. So I don't know that I have any magical answer out for that one. I wish I did.
I don't know that anyone does, really.
Right.
So I started on the school librarian question, and I skipped away, so I'm going to go back to it.
Okay.
The question reads, as a school librarian, I pass your books on to high school girls who are emerging into adult reading. Have you ever thought about writing a novel for teenage young adults?
I have. I have quite a bit. My first novel I ever wrote that was not published, it was before Something Borrowed. I got an agent, and I got a series of rejections from all the publishers, but it was young adult, and I've always been very drawn to coming of age stories and movies, and books and movies. One of my favorite movies is Stand By Me, obviously about 12-year-old boys, and I just recently did a little had a Q&A in Southern Living, and I realized that they said ask for your top 10 Southern reads, and 5 of them were coming of age stories. So it is something that I would like to do. I just, I'm pretty at full capacity with the 3 children and the book every other year, and then occasional little projects, like I'm working on the script for Something Blue right now. But I would love to do that at some point. And I don't know how good I would be at it. As I mentioned, my first book was unpublished, but I think that I would enjoy it.
Well, speaking of Something Blue, we've had a couple of people asking about if there's a release date for the movie of Something Blue.
There's not a release date, but it's definitely happening. All the lawyers and everyone's working on contracts right now. We're trying to get things sorted on the back end, the business end. But the script is really coming along. I think I just mentioned I'm writing it, which is really exciting for me. And then it ultimately will be a collaborative process. And the initial stages of that were very collaborative. I went out to LA and met with Molly Smith, who I mentioned, and her sister Rachel, and several other key people, and we sort of worked out what we think should happen in the movie. And so it's definitely John Krasinski and Kate Hudson are excited about it. John actually saw a tweet that I had written about coming out there to work on it, and he emailed Molly like, "Why didn't you tell me Emily was coming?" And so everyone's excited about it, and I'm hoping that things really start to move along quickly this year and early next year.
That's great. So we just got a new question, which may veer too personal, so stop me if it does. But the question is, does your husband pre-read your books, and does he have any impact in storyline?
It's way too personal. I can't answer that question. Just kidding. No, my husband, he does. There's a handful of people who read very early stages. He doesn't read the chapter by chapter. My best friend and my mother and my sister And my publicist, who's actually just a really good friend also, the four read chapter by chapter as I go. And then when I finish it, my husband reads it right before I send it to my editor. And so he's great about finding the little micro details. Like I remember the example that always stands out for me is when I wrote Something Borrowed. Rachel was on a red-eye flight from New York, and she was looking out and she saw something, like Greenland or something. And my husband's like, if it was red eye, it would be pitch black. She wouldn't be able to see anything. So he catches things like that. Or if someone picks up a water bottle and takes a drink and then they pick it up again but they never put it down, he'll notice that. So he's more into those details and finding the edits than probably the character development side of things. But he's very supportive and he's great around. He's a very good sounding board.
That's great. At Book Talk Nation, we tend to get a lot of process questions for the authors who participate, so we definitely have a few of those.
Okay.
I'll show you a couple. What is the average number of pages you write in a day?
Oh, I really couldn't answer that. It varies way too much. I would say when I'm writing a book, I'm very slow, first of all. So for all those slow writers out there, you can hopefully take solace in that. You're not alone. But a really good day for me would probably be 8 pages, double spaced on a computer. But it's usually fewer than that. So I don't know how many words that is. What is that? 250 words a page, I think. But yeah, it really varies.
And do you hold yourself to any one thing, like I can't get up from this computer until I've done?
No, because there'd be days when I would never go to bed or eat or see my kids if that were the case. What I do try to do is hold myself to a time limit. I think pages work for many. For me, I just try to put in my hours because sometimes you can sit there for several hours and you can feel very unproductive in terms of word count, but you actually made a breakthrough in terms of your story and your characters. So I try not to look at it in terms of output and just more time spent.
And do you write every day?
When I'm writing a story, yes. When I'm in the throes of it, I do try to write every day, except really not on Sundays. Maybe 6 days a week.
Got it.
But like right now, leading up to, the One and Only is coming out in a week now, or what is it, May 20th? What? Kate, my assistant, sitting right here. Here she is. Here. Isn't she pretty? She's a very good assistant. She's getting married on June 28th. June 28th.
13 days away, I think.
So so we're 13 days to the launch, and so I'm not writing at all right now. I'm doing fun chats like this and interviews for various magazines, and just trying to get ready for the book tour. So.
And is there a city you're most excited about going to on your book tour?
Oh, come on! I can't answer that. Can't exclude the other cities. No, I mean really, it does. Regardless of the city, it's just so much fun to. As I said, meet the readers and hear what they have to say, and everyone's so enthusiastic and supportive, and it's so much fun to get out there. And maybe Texas, maybe Dallas, I'm most excited about because the book's set there. But I really couldn't say. I have a fabulous time, whether it's Minneapolis or St. Louis or Los Angeles or DC. I have a great time in all of them. Chicago is my hometown, so I always go back to my hometown bookstore in Naperville called Anderson's, a little bookshop, indie bookshop that is so much fun, and I get to see old friends there. So I'm ready. I'm ready to get out on the road. I'm ready for people to read this book. I cannot wait until everyone reads the book, and then we can talk about the characters and what Shay did.
Okay, so we have time for just like 2 more questions, and there's so many. I'm having trouble picking them. But I'm going to ask you an easy one first because much earlier someone asked where they can get an EG t-shirt.
Oh, like I'm wearing right now. Yeah. See? I put it on just for this. I really don't walk around in my t-shirt that has my initials on it all the time. Although I did just notice that my twin sons' names are not just noticed, but more recently than should have been the case, that their names are Edward and George. Get it? E.G. Cool. We have a few left. I don't know. Yeah, we have if you beg hard enough for one, we'll send you. I'm just kidding. We have a few left. We're thinking about ordering more, but it's kind of hard because we're not a retailer and we don't want to be kind of in the business of selling things, but yet we can't. We can't just order endless amounts and ship them out for free either. So I don't know how to answer that, but maybe look on. If you stay tuned on my Facebook page, while you're here, I guess you know about it. You know about my Facebook page if you're on this chat, probably, likely, but facebook.com/Emily Giffin fans. We might do giveaways. We do a lot of giveaways. We do one every Friday, so I'll try to do a t-shirt giveaway soon.
Excellent. All right, last question. What are you currently reading?
Oh goodness, there's so many things on my nightstand right now, but I'm a little bit of a lull again. Just like this is so all-consuming, getting ready for the tour. But I did just read a book called The Divorce Papers, which is really interesting. It's all written. It's all based on correspondence and legal papers, but it tells the story of a divorce. And I wrote a review for it for the New York Times. I think it's coming out soon, but I did enjoy that book a lot.
Excellent. All right, well, so that brings us to the end of our event for today. Before I let you go, I want to remind everyone about the books for sale. You can purchase a signed and personalized copy of The One and Only right here on this page. The sales will close Sunday night, so make sure you get your order in by then, and then Emily will sign and personalize the copy for you, and local indie Eagle Eye Books in Decatur, Georgia will ship it right to your door. And we want to give a really big thank you to Eagle Eye Books for hosting this event, and thank you to all of you who joined us today and submitted so many questions. And thank you, Emily and Gwen. It was a pleasure to have you join us on Book Talk Nation.
It was fun. Thank you so much for having us.
Yep, thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.